Welcome to this segment of Our Ventura TV. My name is Nicole van Dam, and we're very fortunate to have with us Dr. Christine Sellers, who practices feline veterinary medicine as well as avian veterinary medicine. Dr. Sellers also works with the Wildlife Care Network. Welcome, Dr. Sellers. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I thought we'd start talking about chickens because so many people are thinking about having chickens and having those wonderful homegrown eggs. Assuming that their zoning allows them to do this, what should people do in terms of prep before they go out and buy those chickens?
Well, they should think about the safety of their backyard, how much room they have for the hens, and how much time they really want to devote to having the chickens. The main problem is having predators come into their backyard, so the enclosure and the hen house should be made predator safe, meaning that the fencing around the coop should be dug down about a foot deep so that raccoons and skunks and possums can't dig under at night and go in and get the hens. Also, hens can fly to a certain extent, which most people don't realize, and so it should have some fencing around the area that's over 6 feet high so that they can be restrained into whatever area people want to have them contained into.
And can predators include the family's own pets like their dogs and cats?
Absolutely. Dogs especially. Cats usually don't go after chickens after they get about 5 months old. Babies, the chicks oftentimes are very much attractive to the cats. But dogs at any age should be kept away from the chickens because the dogs will get them almost as a sport. So you need to think about what kind of dogs you have and making so that the dogs don't have access to the hens.
And then when people go out and decide that they're going to actually go out and buy the chicks, any advice for that process?
It's best to get baby chicks from a reputable feed store or breeder where they have been vaccinated and they're going to be disease free. Oftentimes if people get them from a backyard breeder or a friend or a rescue organization, they can come with parasites and diseases, and especially if they have an existing flock, they can introduce diseases into their healthy hens, which I see a lot. And then you've got a disease on your property that you can't get rid of unless you get rid of all your flock and decontaminate, which can be a long process. So your local feed stores will know where they've gotten them from, if they've been vaccinated, and if they're disease-free.
That's very important
Yes.
advice. So do people have to buy a rooster in order for their chickens to lay eggs?
No, hens will lay eggs regardless of if there's a rooster or not. And fertile eggs are no more nutritious than non-fertile eggs. And generally the hens will start laying when they're about 5 or 6 months old, even the small breeds, and they'll lay eggs for about 3 years, and then they will decrease in frequency depending upon the breed of the hen, but most chickens will live until they're about 12 years of age. The smaller breeds live longer, kind of like dogs. The smaller they are, the longer they live.
And you mentioned breeds. I've seen some very fancy looking chickens out there.
Yeah.
Are the eggs any tastier if it's a fancier looking chicken?
No, but they're generally smaller. The fancy breed chickens, especially the little game hens and Polishes and silkies, they're smaller, and they do have a larger yolk to white ratio.
Oh, interesting.
There'll be different colors, lots of different shades of browns, and maybe you've seen the Americana chickens, which are fancy, and they lay the green or blue eggs, which people enjoy.
And what about a particular breed of hen that you would recommend for egg laying? Is there one in particular?
Well, and that's best to ask the feed store which ones they're able to get. But there are certain breeds that are good egg layers, and there are ones that are better depending upon it. Some people like to have them for meat. They're better for eating. And then some are just good companion birds. But the more that the hen lays eggs, probably the shorter they're going to live. And people need to keep that in mind. Heavy egg-laying hens generally only live 5 or 6 years, as opposed to the more companion birds are the ones that live 12 years.
Okay, that's good to know. And what's the maintenance like on chickens?
Well, they do get parasites, just like your dog or cat. They get external parasites, they get fleas, and they get lice. And a lot of people will bring their chickens in to me completely unaware that they have external parasites. So they should be checked about once a month. You can just go through their feathers and on their combs and make sure they don't have any external parasites. And then their enclosure also needs to be kept clean because they can reinfect themselves, even if you treated the hens. And then they should be wormed twice a year, because they will pick up parasites from eating off the ground, free range. Even if they're just in their little coop, they can pick up internal parasites. So twice a year they should be internally wormed as well.
Well, that'll give people a good insight on how to start. Now, switching gears a little bit and looking at pet birds. For a family that's thinking about getting a pet bird, what types of things should they consider?
Well, again, you need to consider what your household is made up of, and whether there's the family dynamics, from other pets to how the house is laid out, whether or not doors are going to be open a lot if you have small children, if you have dogs that may be attracted to getting at the birds. Cats really like the small birds, not so much the big birds. And also a noise factor. If you have people in the house that are sensitive to noise, birds are not quiet. So it can be, if people are sensitive to noise, you want to get a smaller bird because they can be much quieter. And it also has to fit into your daily routine because they do require daily maintenance.
So in terms of a bird to start with, for someone who hasn't had a bird before, is there a particular breed?
I always recommend either cockatiels or parakeets because they're small. They don't take up a lot of room. You don't have to have them out of the cage if you don't want to. They're not very noisy. Their diets can be simple, and they're very friendly and do really well with kids. So if you have children, they can participate in caring for them. If they do bite, it's a very small
little bite.
Small bite. They're not going to hurt anything. And if they do get out, they're pretty easy to catch.
Now, can you tell a boy bird from a girl bird when you're buying them?
There's a few species that do have distinctive characteristics between boys and girls as far as birds go, but not many. Most of the time, we have to check their DNA.
Oh, really? So
yeah, or wait for them to lay an egg.
And that's another question. If all you have is a female bird, would they still lay eggs?
They can. Some of the smaller ones, especially lovebirds, cockatiels, canaries, they do lay eggs on their own. Sometimes they're very prolific, which can be a problem. The larger birds, they can. Cockatoos do like to lay eggs, but most of the larger birds like African greys, macaws, cockatoos, they like to be pair bonded before they lay.
Okay. And what about maintenance on a pet bird?
Maintenance, the main thing that you need to think about with birds, and I always tell people, they hide their symptoms. And we say that you can tell when they're sick by a change. At the clinic, we use the term BARE, B-A-R-E, which is bright, alert, responsive, and eating. And if any of these change, that means that the bird is ill. So in caring for a bird, you need to remember that they are essentially locked in their apartment with broken plumbing. They have their water there, their food there, but they are soiling their cage all day long. So they need to be kept very clean, which means daily cleaning of their food, their water, and their cage. And then fresh food daily and being kept warm.
And do their droppings tell a story if the droppings change and what they look like?
Yes, the droppings, if they change in color or change in consistency, and also if the bird spends a lot of time on the bottom of the cage. I must say that most of the time when people bring their birds in and they're very, very ill, they say, he was fine yesterday. Because the birds hide their symptoms until they are nearly gone.
So you have to be really on the watch.
Really alert for any changes. And I tell people the best thing you can do is get a scale and weigh your bird once a week, because if there's any change in weight, usually going down, that's a sign of illness. And because they'll hide that too by fluffing up. They'll hide it.
And what about blending like large breed birds with small breed birds in the same household or the same cage?
Generally not the same cage, because I see lots of toes get bit, beaks get bit, lots of injuries, kind of like the big dog, small dog kind of stuff that goes on. In the same household, it's fine. And the larger birds do make more noise, of course, but sometimes people will bring in the larger birds and I'll hear them making parakeet noises, or the parakeet will make say the same words the macaw will make. Every once in a while, someone will bring in an Amazon that gets along with a parakeet, and they'll be in the same cage, and I'm always amazed.
And what are your top 3 tips for bird owners? I
would say, again, clean cage, a good diet, and you can get all kinds of information about good diet. The internet is a wonderful source for species-specific diets. Having fresh fruits and vegetables, birds, certain species do very well on pelleted diets, and some do well on pellet and seed blend. And then water type. I do not recommend reverse osmosis water or softened water for any birds. The reverse osmosis water leaches all the minerals out of their system, and they can get heart problems, kidney problems. So filtered tap waters is always best. And then as a fourth thing, temperature. They do very, very well between 65 and 90 degrees.
Okay. And in terms of feeding, I didn't ask you about the chickens. Can you feed chickens table scraps, or is it also pelleted food that you would buy at the store?
Both. Yeah, if they're laying, they make a lay pellet, and if they're not laying, there's a maintenance pellet, and then if you have chicks, there's a growth pellet or mash. And then you can always feed them table scraps as well. They do very well on leftovers from making your salads and everything. They do like cooked meats as well.
So even carnivorous?
Yes, they do like their meat. The one thing that I tell people to avoid is cut grass or weed clippings, because it lays in their crop almost like hair in a drain. And I do get quite a few chickens that come in that are obstructed when people have, in the summertime, if they've mowed down weeds or grass, and the chickens just go over with unlimited access and consume too much, and they come in and they're obstructed.
Oh, that's an important thing for people to be aware of. So moving on now to wild birds. You work with the Santa Barbara County Wildlife Care Network. What is a wildlife care network?
Well, the Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network has been around for over 20 years. They were started back as a grassroots organization years and years ago with people working out of their homes. Since then, it has blossomed into a wonderful support network that is on North Fairview Road in Goleta, and there are saltwater facilities that rehab the seabirds. There's mammal facilities, everything. So and there's an organization in Ventura, the Ventura Audubon Society, who triages the different species. If you go to their website, you can see the different species.
VenturaAudubon.org.
VenturaAudubon.org. Yes, all one word, Ventura Audubon.
And we're getting close to being out of time, unfortunately. So very quickly, are there websites that people can go to learn more?
Yes, Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network is swbn.org, and the VenturaAudubon.org, and you can always go to my website, which is catandbirds.com.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sellers, for coming. Our time with Dr. Sellers truly flew. This is Nicole van Dam signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Thank you and be well until next time.